Alright guys, on today's video we start the break-in period for my 1963 Studebaker Lark. If you guys haven't been following this build, we swapped an L83 into this car, installed some Corvette parts into the engine, and tried to make it sound like a C8 Z06 with a set of 180-degree headers. For the transmission setup, we went with a TKX 5-speed, and that was the part that needed the break-in. All told, I have about $5,000 into this transmission setup, including the transmission, flywheel, clutch, all the miscellaneous bolts and hardware, and this is the most that I have ever spent on a transmission setup. Therefore, I intended to take the break-in pretty seriously. I would hate to have an issue with that much of an investment for just being impatient. So we started the break-in period and it was going pretty smoothly. I put about 50 miles on the car and then the car started making these noises. I was being really conservative with the few pulls you just saw. I was only at like a quarter throttle and I certainly wasn't trying to shift it hard. Now, I want you to pay attention to this particular moment. This was kind of a big moment for me. What you just saw was uncontrollable laughter. And I haven't experienced that with a car in quite some time. New people to the channel may not know that I came painfully close to losing my dad due to a racing accident that we had earlier this year. And I've had a dozen times since then that I just kept asking myself, why do we do this? And I just wanted to quit. And this was sort of the first time since the accident that I had a moment where it was like, oh yeah, this is why we do this. And it reminded me that despite all of the struggle and the hardship that you can sometimes have with a car, in the end, it's worth it. So I just want to say a big thanks to everybody for following us along on this journey, and I look forward to bringing you guys more exciting content. I had such a good time on that drive that I'm not even really mad that I just found out that my fuel tank is bad. Now, I already drained all of the fuel out of the thing, but the fuel tank actually started leaking out of the seam here. You can still see some evidence of the fuel leaking out. And I don't even blame it. This fuel tank just turned 60 years old, along with the rest of the car. Not to mention some 16-year-old got a hold of the thing and added this little sump here on the bottom. So needless to say, this fuel tank has been through a lot, and it's probably time for a fresh one. So we're gonna drop this thing out and put a new fuel tank in it. Alright guys, what you're looking at here is a tank that is spec'd out for a 60 to 65 Ford Falcon. I bought this from Tanks Incorporated, and I'm kind of a big fan of the products that they produce. I'm not sponsored by them, I just like their products. And one of the reasons is they offer pretty much all of their products with a EFI version of the tank. Now, what their EFI version includes is an extra hole here for the internal fuel pump, but they go a little bit further than that, and the tank is actually baffled on the inside in order to keep the fuel pump submerged and make it so that you don't have issues with fuel slosh and losing fuel pressure. This is a problem that I had with my station wagon, and when I went to this style setup, the problem went away. So the reason I chose this tank in particular is it fit the dimensions of my Studebaker, and also it had the fuel fill here in the back, and it looks to be about in the same spot as what I need for the car. Now originally these style tanks, they bolted through, and this was sort of the trunk floor in the Falcons, similar to like a Mustang. And I'm not going to do it that way on my Studebaker. Instead, I'm going to make a steel frame here, and then I can use the original brackets in the back of my Studebaker in order to hold everything where it needs to be. So let's get to fabricating and get this thing up in there so that we can take this thing back on the road. Alright guys, we got the fuel tank up in there, and I think it came out pretty decent. As I mentioned before, I made a nice little steel frame here to hold the fuel tank, and it's in there nice and solid. So the next thing that I want to do is something that I have always wanted to do, and that is to truly calibrate the fuel level sensor. Now, most of the time when you're looking at your fuel gauge, you'll see empty and full, but that really doesn't tell you a whole lot. And what I'd love to do is I would like to pour in gas at fixed increments into the tank. And since I have my fuel level gauge run into my Holley Dominator, I can watch what happens to the voltage on the computer. And I should be able to make a curve that tells me exactly how many gallons of fuel are left in the tank. So it was a little bit tedious, but after all that work, we came up with this voltage curve right here, and then we plugged it into our computer here, and now when we look at our dash, we see a number down here on our fuel gauge instead of a percentage, and that number correlates to the number of gallons that are in the tank. Alright, let's get back to the break-in. Well, I'm finding all kinds of excuses to take this thing for a drive. Gotta go mow my brother's lawn, so here we go. So with that little trip out of the way and a whole bunch of loops around my house, and the break-in period was finally done. And naturally I rolled right from that break-in period into a burnout. guys, so I hope you guys enjoyed that montage. I think this is where we're going to wrap this video up. The next time that you see this car, I might take it to the dyno, I might not. I know that can be really hard on the clutches. Maybe if you guys have experience with some manual transmission stuff, leave a comment down below on what you think I should do in that particular area. But if we don't take it to the dyno, we're going to take it straight to the track, and we're going to see what this little 5.3 liter can do. So with that, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.